I watched in stunned silence as 27-year-old heir apparent Tyler Blackwood tore my critical safety violation report into confetti, letting the pieces flutter onto his mahogany desk. "Your compliance role is a complete waste of budget," he sneered, leaning back in his leather chair. The shredded pages contained documentation of 17 OSHA violations that could kill workers within weeks. As Tyler's laughter echoed through the executive office, I realized this spoiled billionaire's son had just signed his own corporate death warrant. I quietly reached for my phone. My name is Margot, and I had spent 3 years as Environmental Health and Safety Compliance Officer at Blackwood Industrial Manufacturing, a chemical processing plant sprawled across 42 acres in southeastern Ohio. Those 3 years had been the most fulfilling of my career, working alongside 400 dedicated employees who trusted me to keep them safe while they manufactured industrial solvents and cleaning compounds. Everything changed 6 months ago when Harold Blackwood, the company founder, suffered a massive stroke. His son Tyler swooped in like a vulture, immediately assuming the role of operations director despite having zero industrial experience. His Ivy League MBA and trust fund arrogance became the driving force behind what he called aggressive cost optimization strategies. The 17 violations I had documented weren't minor infractions. The ventilation system in Building C had been malfunctioning for 8 weeks, exposing workers to dangerous chemical vapors that exceeded federal safety limits by 300%. Our emergency eye wash stations contained water that hadn't been tested in 14 months. The chemical storage area violated EPA protocols with mixed incompatible substances stored within 6 feet of each other. Fire exits in the main processing floor had been blocked with equipment to maximize productive floor space. I had spent 2 weeks meticulously documenting each violation with photographs, air quality readings, and detailed descriptions. Workers had been approaching me privately, sharing concerns about headaches, respiratory irritation, and skin reactions. Sarah Thompson from the mixing department showed me chemical burns on her forearms from faulty protective equipment. James Miller in quality control described dizzy spells that started after the ventilation problems began. When I requested the meeting with Tyler, I believed we could address these issues systematically. The estimated cost for bringing the facility into compliance was approximately $800,000, significant but manageable for a company generating $50 million annually. I prepared charts showing how the investment would prevent potential lawsuits, federal fines, and most importantly, protect our workforce. Tyler's office occupied the entire top floor of the administrative building, decorated with expensive artwork and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the manufacturing complex. He sat behind a desk that probably cost more than most workers earned in 6 months, wearing a custom-tailored navy suit and gold cufflinks that caught the morning sunlight. "Margot, right," he said without looking up from his tablet. "I've been reviewing your department's budget allocation. Frankly, I'm questioning whether we need a dedicated safety position at all." I placed my report on his desk, open to the executive summary. "Tyler, we have serious compliance issues that require immediate attention. The longer we wait, the greater the risk to our employees and the company." He glanced at the first page, then started tearing it methodically. "This is exactly the kind of wasteful thinking that's been draining our profit margins. Safety regulations are suggestions, Margot. Guidelines for companies that can't manage risk intelligently." Each tearing sound felt like a physical blow. Weeks of careful documentation, photographs of dangerous conditions, detailed cost analyses, all reduced to colorful scraps floating onto his pristine desk. "Tyler, these violations could result in serious injuries or deaths. We're talking about people's lives. We're talking about unnecessary expenses," he countered, continuing to shred page after page. "My research shows that most industrial accidents result from worker negligence, not equipment failures. If these people would follow basic protocols and pay attention to their jobs, we wouldn't need expensive safety equipment." I watched him destroy the section documenting respiratory complaints. "The ventilation system isn't working properly. Workers are being exposed to chemical concentrations that exceed federal limits. Then they should wear better masks or request transfers to different departments, Tyler replied dismissively. Personal responsibility, Margot. It's a concept that seems foreign to your generation. When he finished shredding the report, Tyler leaned back with satisfaction. Here's what's going to happen. Your position is being eliminated effective immediately. I've already contacted my network in the chemical manufacturing industry to ensure you understand that challenging my decisions will have consequences for your future employment prospects. The blood drained from my face. You're firing me for doing my job. I'm eliminating an unnecessary expense and removing an obstacle to profitability, he clarified. Security will escort you from the building. Your personal belongings will be shipped to your home address. Jake Morrison, the head of security, appeared in the doorway. His weathered face showed discomfort with the situation, but he followed orders professionally. Miss Margot, I need to walk you out. As we walked through the administrative building, Jake spoke quietly. I'm sorry about this. The workers respect you and everyone knows you're looking out for them. Linda Rodriguez, the receptionist, looked up with tears in her eyes as we passed. She had worked at Blackwood for 15 years and understood what my departure meant for workplace safety. Take care of yourself, Margot, she whispered. Sitting in my Honda Civic in the employee parking lot, I stared at the massive industrial complex where I had spent 3 years building relationships and protecting lives. The afternoon shift was beginning, workers streaming through the main entrance, unaware that their safety advocate had just been eliminated by a spoiled heir who valued profit over people. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the contact I hoped I would never need to call: Rachel Martinez, Senior Inspector with the Ohio Department of Commerce Division of Industrial Compliance and Labor. My finger hovered over her number as Tyler's threat echoed in my mind. He had the connections and resources to destroy my career permanently. But Sarah Thompson's chemical burns and James Miller's dizzy spells weren't going away because Tyler fired me. If anything, conditions would deteriorate rapidly without oversight. I thought about the 400 people who depended on that facility for their livelihoods and deserved to work without risking their health and safety. I pressed the call button. Rachel Martinez answered on the second ring. Ohio Department of Commerce Inspector Martinez speaking. Inspector Martinez, my name is Margot Williams. I'm calling to report serious safety violations at Blackwood Industrial Manufacturing in Ashford County. There was a pause, then Martinez's voice became more focused. Blackwood Industrial, hold on, let me pull up their file. I heard keyboard clicks in the background. Miss Williams, what's your relationship to the facility? I was their environmental health and safety compliance officer until about 2 hours ago. I was fired for documenting violations that the new operations director didn't want to address. Interesting timing, Martinez said. We've been receiving anonymous complaints about Blackwood for the past 4 months. Workers reporting respiratory problems, chemical exposure incidents, and management intimidation tactics. Tell me about these violations. My heart raced as I realized other employees had been reaching out for help. I documented 17 specific OSHA and EPA violations, including faulty ventilation systems, expired safety equipment, improper chemical storage, and blocked emergency exits. I have photographs, air quality readings, and detailed documentation. Miss Williams, I need to be completely transparent with you. 3 Blackwood employees have been hospitalized in the past 6 months with chemical exposure symptoms. We've been investigating but haven't had anyone with your credentials willing to come forward officially. The gravity of the situation hit me. Hospitalized, I wasn't told about any hospitalizations. Management has been keeping incidents quiet and pressuring workers not to file official reports. We suspect there have been more unreported exposures. The anonymous complaints started increasing dramatically after Tyler Blackwood took over operations. Martinez explained that the anonymous tips had been flooding in since Tyler's arrival. Workers describing deteriorating safety conditions, increased pressure to ignore protocols, and fear of retaliation for reporting concerns. The pattern suggested systematic dismantling of safety procedures in favor of cost-cutting. Inspector Martinez, I kept personal copies of all my documentation. I have everything needed to demonstrate willful negligence and deliberate disregard for worker safety. That's exactly what we need, Martinez said urgently. Miss Williams, I've been working industrial safety compliance for 15 years, and this situation shows me all the signs of a major federal case. Would you be willing to meet tomorrow morning to review your documentation? I explained Tyler's threats about destroying my career and his connections throughout the industry. Martinez assured me that federal whistleblower protections would shield me from retaliation and that my evidence could be crucial for preventing serious injuries or deaths. We arranged to meet at my apartment the following morning at 8 o'clock. Martinez warned me to keep our conversation confidential and avoid any contact with Blackwood personnel until after our meeting. That evening, I spread my documentation across my dining room table. 237 photographs showing safety violations throughout the facility, air quality reports demonstrating dangerous chemical concentrations in multiple work areas, correspondence with equipment manufacturers about overdue maintenance and expired certifications, worker complaint forms that I had filed with management, all ignored or dismissed. The most disturbing discovery came when I cross-referenced my timeline with Tyler's cost-cutting initiatives. Every safety violation corresponded directly with his optimization decisions. Ventilation maintenance canceled to save $60,000. Emergency equipment testing postponed indefinitely. Chemical storage reorganized to increase capacity while ignoring compatibility protocols. I thought about Sarah Thompson's chemical burns and wondered how many other workers were suffering in silence, afraid to report problems that might cost them their jobs. Tyler had created an environment where speaking up about safety concerns became an act of courage that could result in termination. My phone buzzed with text messages from former colleagues. Word had spread quickly about my dismissal, and workers were expressing concern about what would happen to workplace safety. Linda Rodriguez texted, "Everyone knows you cared about keeping us safe. We're scared about what happens next." I couldn't sleep that night reviewing my documentation and preparing for the meeting that could change everything. Outside my apartment window, I could see the glow from Blackwood Industrial's night shift operations. Somewhere in those buildings, people were working in potentially dangerous conditions, while Tyler Blackwood slept peacefully in his mansion, confident that eliminating me had solved his safety problem. Meanwhile, Tyler was celebrating what he considered a major victory. According to his calculations, eliminating my position and canceling pending safety improvements would save the company approximately $1.2 million annually. He had already drafted a memo to the board of directors highlighting his decisive cost-cutting measures and promising increased profitability. At 7:30 the next morning, I was reviewing my documentation one final time when Rachel Martinez knocked on my door. She was a woman in her mid-40s with graying hair and the confident bearing of someone who had spent decades protecting workers from corporate negligence. "Miss Williams, thank you for coming forward. Before we begin, I want you to understand the potential scope of this investigation." She explained that the anonymous complaints and hospitalization reports had triggered interest from multiple federal agencies. The Environmental Protection Agency was concerned about potential environmental violations. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration was investigating workplace safety complaints. When combined with my comprehensive documentation, the situation could escalate into a major federal investigation. "The evidence you've described could support charges ranging from willful safety violations to environmental crimes," Martinez said. "But I need to see everything before determining our next steps." I handed her my carefully organized files, watching her expression grow increasingly serious as she reviewed each violation. The photographs of blocked fire exits made her shake her head. The air quality reports showing dangerous chemical concentrations caused her to make notes about immediate health hazards. "Miss Williams, this is some of the most comprehensive safety violation documentation I have seen in my career. Your attention to detail and professional methodology make this extremely valuable evidence." She explained that my documentation provided the missing link between worker complaints and verifiable safety violations. The photographs with timestamps and location data would be crucial for establishing a pattern of willful negligence. I need to make some calls, Martinez said. The scope of these violations requires federal involvement. Are you prepared to serve as a key witness in what could become a significant legal case? I thought about Sarah Thompson's chemical burns, James Miller's dizzy spells, and the 400 workers who deserved safe working conditions. Inspector Martinez, if my testimony can protect those people and hold Tyler Blackwood accountable for endangering lives, I'll do whatever is necessary. She made several phone calls while I waited, speaking with EPA representatives and OSHA coordinators. I caught fragments of conversation about environmental crimes, willful endangerment, and federal task force coordination. When she finished, Martinez turned to me with a serious expression. Miss Williams, this investigation just became much larger than a standard safety compliance review. We're looking at potential criminal charges against Tyler Blackwood and possibly other Blackwood industrial executives. Inspector Martinez spent the next 3 hours methodically reviewing every piece of documentation I had compiled. Her 15 years of experience in industrial safety compliance became evident as she identified patterns and violations that even I hadn't fully recognized. This ventilation system failure alone constitutes a federal crime, she said, holding up air quality reports showing chemical concentrations 3 times above permissible limits. Knowingly exposing workers to these levels demonstrates willful endangerment. She called Dr. Sarah Chen, an EPA environmental specialist, who joined our conversation via speakerphone. Dr. Chen's expertise in industrial chemical processes helped identify additional violations I hadn't categorized properly. The chemical storage configuration in Building D is extremely dangerous, Dr. Chen observed after reviewing my photographs. Mixing oxidizers with flammable solvents in the same storage area could result in explosive reactions. This isn't just an OSHA violation, it's potential environmental terrorism. Inspector Martinez pulled out her tablet and began documenting our findings. Miss Williams, I need to share something that will help you understand the urgency of this situation. Tyler Blackwood hasn't just been cutting safety costs. Our preliminary investigation suggests he's been illegally dumping chemical waste to avoid proper disposal fees. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Illegal dumping where we believe untreated industrial solvents are being discharged into Beaver Creek, which flows directly into the Muskingum River watershed. The environmental impact could affect drinking water for 3 counties. Dr. Chen explained that illegal chemical dumping constituted a federal environmental crime, punishable by significant prison time and massive financial penalties. Combined with the workplace safety violations, Tyler could face decades in federal prison. Your documentation proves that these weren't accidents or oversights, Martinez continued. The systematic nature of the violations demonstrates deliberate decision-making to prioritize profit over safety and environmental protection. Mark Rodriguez, an OSHA federal investigator, joined our conference call at 10:30. His experience with major industrial safety cases provided additional perspective on the potential criminal charges Tyler could face. Willful endangerment of workers combined with environmental crimes creates a federal case that could result in facility closure and personal criminal liability for corporate executives, Rodriguez explained. Miss Williams, your evidence provides the foundation for charges that could put Tyler Blackwood in federal prison for 20 to 30 years. The scope of the investigation was expanding beyond anything I had imagined when I made that first phone call. What began as reporting safety violations had uncovered systematic criminal behavior that threatened both worker safety and environmental protection. Martinez explained that a coordinated federal task force was being assembled to conduct a surprise inspection of the Blackwood facility. We need your cooperation as a key witness, Miss Williams. Your detailed knowledge of the facility layout and violations will be crucial for an effective inspection. I agreed to participate, understanding that my testimony could be the difference between holding Tyler accountable and allowing him to continue endangering lives. Martinez provided me with federal whistleblower protection documentation, ensuring that Tyler's threats about destroying my career would be legally meaningless. The inspection is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock, Martinez said. We want to arrive before Tyler has an opportunity to implement any emergency corrections or destroy evidence. She explained that the inspection team would include herself, Dr. Chen Rodriguez, and potentially federal marshals if criminal charges appeared imminent. My role would be guiding them to specific violation locations and providing technical context for the documented safety failures. That afternoon, I reviewed my documentation one final time, ensuring that every violation was properly referenced and easily accessible during the inspection. The weight of responsibility felt enormous, knowing that 400 workers' safety depended on the success of this investigation. Meanwhile, Tyler was completely unaware of the federal storm approaching his facility. He spent the afternoon in meetings with other executives discussing additional cost-cutting measures that would further increase profit margins. His arrogance had blinded him to the legal consequences of his actions. I called Sarah Thompson that evening to check on her chemical burns. She reported that the skin irritation was worsening and she was concerned about long-term health effects from continued exposure to faulty equipment. Margot, since you left, things have gotten worse, Sarah confided. They removed more safety equipment to make room for additional production lines. People are scared, but nobody wants to complain and risk getting fired like you. Her words reinforced my determination to see the investigation through to its conclusion. Tyler's intimidation tactics were silencing workers who deserved protection from dangerous working conditions. James Miller sent me a text message describing worsening respiratory symptoms and headaches that started during his shifts. The air seems thicker now, and several people in quality control are having similar problems. Management told us to take aspirin and tough it out. These conversations with former colleagues reminded me why I had chosen a career in workplace safety. Behind every regulation and safety protocol were real people with families and futures who deserve to return home healthy every day. Inspector Martinez called that evening to confirm final details for the morning inspection. Miss Williams, I want you to understand that tomorrow's inspection could trigger immediate facility closure if conditions are as dangerous as your documentation suggests. She explained that federal inspectors had the authority to shut down operations immediately if they determined that continued operation posed imminent danger to worker safety or environmental protection. Tyler's belief that his wealth and connections would protect him from consequences was about to be tested against federal law enforcement. I went to bed that night knowing that the next day would change everything for Blackwood Industrial Manufacturing. Tyler Blackwood's arrogance and criminal negligence were about to collide with federal justice, and 400 workers would finally have the protection they deserved. The irony wasn't lost on me that Tyler's decision to fire me had actually accelerated the federal investigation that would ultimately destroy his career and potentially land him in prison. His attempt to silence me had instead given federal authorities the evidence they needed to pursue serious criminal charges. Tomorrow would bring justice for Sarah Thompson's chemical burns, James Miller's respiratory problems, and every worker who had suffered in silence while Tyler prioritized profit over people's lives and safety. Tuesday morning arrived gray and cold, with frost covering the parking lot outside Blackwood Industrial Manufacturing. At exactly 7 o'clock, 3 vehicles pulled into the visitor parking area: Inspector Martinez's state vehicle, Dr. Sarah Chen's EPA sedan, and Mark Rodriguez's federal OSHA truck loaded with testing equipment. I met them at the main entrance, watching Tyler's security cameras track our movements. Jake Morrison, the head of security, greeted us with obvious nervousness. "Good morning, folks. I'll need to call Mr. Blackwood before I can authorize facility access." Martinez stepped forward with her credentials. "This is an unannounced federal inspection. We have full authority to access all areas of this facility immediately. Please contact Mr. Blackwood and inform him that federal inspectors are on site." Jake's face went pale as he read the official documentation. Yes, ma'am, I'll call him right away. Within minutes, Tyler burst through the administrative building entrance, still buttoning his shirt and looking disheveled from being awakened by security. His usual arrogance was replaced by confusion and growing alarm. What's the meaning of this? Tyler demanded. You can't just walk into a private facility without notice. Dr. Chen presented her EPA credentials. Mr. Blackwood, we're conducting a joint federal inspection based on serious safety and environmental violations. We have full legal authority to examine all facility operations. Rodriguez added his OSHA documentation to the presentation. Sir, we're investigating complaints of willful safety violations and worker endangerment. This inspection will proceed with or without your cooperation. Tyler's eyes found me standing behind the inspection team. Margot, what are you doing here? Miss Williams is providing technical assistance as a federal witness, Martinez explained. She has extensive knowledge of this facility that will help us conduct a thorough inspection. Tyler's face flushed red with anger. This is harassment. I'll have my lawyers shut this down before noon. You're welcome to contact your legal counsel, Mr. Blackwood, Rodriguez replied calmly. But this inspection will continue as scheduled. Federal law supersedes any corporate legal maneuvering. Our first stop was Building C, where the ventilation system failures I had documented were causing dangerous chemical exposures. Dr. Chen immediately began air quality testing while Rodriguez examined the faulty ventilation equipment. These readings are extremely dangerous, Dr. Chen announced after 15 minutes of testing. Chemical concentrations are exceeding federal safety limits by 400%. Tyler attempted to deflect responsibility. The ventilation system is scheduled for maintenance next month. These are temporary conditions. Martinez consulted my documentation. According to Miss Williams' records, this system has been malfunctioning for 10 weeks. You were specifically informed about the danger to workers. Rodriguez discovered additional violations I hadn't been aware of. The ventilation system's filters hadn't been changed in 18 months, and several exhaust fans had been disconnected to reduce electrical costs. Mr. Blackwood, these modifications demonstrate willful disregard for worker safety. We moved to the chemical storage area in Building D, where Dr. Chen's expertise proved crucial. She immediately identified the explosive potential of Tyler's storage configuration changes. This is incredibly dangerous, Dr. Chen said, photographing containers of oxidizers stored within 3 feet of flammable solvents. A single spark could cause an explosion that would level this entire building. Tyler's defenses became increasingly desperate. Our insurance company approved these storage modifications. Everything meets industry standards. Federal EPA standards supersede insurance company guidelines, Dr. Chen responded. This configuration violates multiple environmental protection regulations. Rodriguez was documenting blocked emergency exits when Steven Garcia, a worker in the chemical processing area, suddenly collapsed near the mixing stations. The man hit the concrete floor hard, convulsing and gasping for air while his co-workers rushed to help. Call 911, Martinez shouted as Dr. Chen knelt beside Steven, checking his pulse and breathing. The paramedics arrived within 8 minutes, finding Steven unconscious, with symptoms consistent with acute chemical poisoning. Dr. Chen's preliminary testing revealed dangerous toxin levels in the surrounding air that explained his collapse. This man is suffering from acute chemical exposure, the lead paramedic reported. He needs immediate hospital treatment for potential respiratory and neurological damage. Tyler watched the medical emergency with growing horror, finally understanding that his cost-cutting measures were literally killing workers. This is just an isolated incident. Steven probably has a pre-existing condition. Rodriguez stepped forward with barely contained anger. Mr. Blackwood, your statements are being documented as evidence. Any attempt to blame workers for conditions you created will be used against you in federal court. As Steven was loaded into the ambulance, Dr. Chen pulled Martinez aside. These toxin levels could cause permanent organ damage or death with prolonged exposure. This facility represents an imminent danger to every worker. Martinez made the call I knew was coming. She contacted federal authorities to report an immediate threat to worker safety, requiring emergency intervention. We need federal marshals and closure authority. This facility cannot continue operating under current conditions. Tyler overheard portions of the conversation and began panicking. You can't shut down a $100 million operation over one worker incident. Do you have any idea how many people depend on this facility for employment? Mr. Blackwood, 400 people depend on this facility for their lives and health, Martinez replied. Your decisions have created conditions that could kill workers. Federal law requires immediate intervention. Dr. Chen completed her environmental testing and delivered devastating results. We've identified at least 12 federal environmental violations in addition to the workplace safety issues. The illegal chemical dumping into Beaver Creek constitutes a major environmental crime. Rodriguez's OSHA inspection confirmed every violation I had documented and discovered several additional safety failures. Mr. Blackwood, this is the worst case of willful safety negligence I've encountered in 20 years of federal inspection work. Tyler's attempts at damage control became increasingly frantic. Look, we can fix these problems. Give me 30 days to bring everything into compliance. I'll spend whatever it takes. The time for voluntary compliance ended when you fired Miss Williams for trying to protect your workers, Martinez said. Your actions demonstrate a pattern of willful endangerment that requires federal intervention. As news of Stephen Garcia's hospitalization spread through the facility, workers began gathering in break areas, discussing their own health problems and concerns about working conditions. Many approached me privately to express gratitude for bringing federal authorities to investigate the dangerous situation. Sarah Thompson found me during the lunch break, tears in her eyes. Margot, thank you for not giving up on us. After you were fired, we thought nobody cared about keeping us safe. James Miller and several other workers from quality control shared stories of worsening health symptoms that they had been afraid to report. The pattern of respiratory problems, headaches, and skin irritation painted a clear picture of systematic chemical exposure. Tyler spent the afternoon making desperate phone calls to corporate lawyers, federal politicians, and business contacts, trying to find someone who could stop the investigation. Each call ended with disappointment as he learned that federal safety and environmental laws couldn't be influenced by political connections or financial contributions. By 4 o'clock, the inspection team had documented 43 separate federal violations, spanning workplace safety, environmental protection, and criminal endangerment. The evidence was overwhelming and indisputable, supported by scientific testing, photographic documentation, and witness testimony. Martinez gathered the inspection team for a final consultation. Based on our findings, this facility represents an imminent danger to worker safety and environmental protection. Federal law requires immediate closure pending full compliance and criminal investigation. Tyler's world was about to collapse, and he didn't even realize it yet. At 4:30 that afternoon, Inspector Martinez made the call that would change everything. Standing in the main administrative building with Tyler watching nervously, she contacted the Regional Federal Marshal's Office and the Emergency Response Division of the Ohio Department of Commerce. This is Inspector Rachel Martinez conducting a joint federal inspection at Blackwood Industrial Manufacturing. I'm declaring an emergency closure under Federal Code Title 29, Section 654. We have imminent danger to worker safety requiring immediate federal intervention. Tyler's face went white. Emergency closure. You can't shut down a $100 million operation. I have contracts, deadlines, 400 employees who depend on their paychecks. Dr. Chen looked up from her final environmental assessment. Mr. Blackwood, your facility has been illegally dumping chemical waste for months while exposing workers to toxin levels that caused Stephen Garcia's collapse today. Federal law requires immediate cessation of operations. Rodriguez finished documenting the last of 43 federal violations. Sir, continued operation under these conditions would constitute criminal endangerment. Every day you operate this facility, you're committing federal crimes. Tyler's arrogance finally cracked, replaced by desperate panic. This is insane. You can't destroy an entire company over some minor safety issues. My father built this business over 30 years. These aren't minor safety issues, Martinez replied firmly. Stephen Garcia was hospitalized with chemical poisoning. Workers throughout this facility are suffering respiratory damage, skin burns, and neurological symptoms from your willful negligence. Two black SUVs pulled into the administrative parking area, followed by a truck loaded with chain link barriers and padlocks. Federal marshals emerged wearing tactical gear and carrying official closure notices. Marshal David Thompson approached Tyler with professional authority. Mr. Tyler Blackwood, you're being served with a federal emergency closure order for Blackwood Industrial Manufacturing. This facility is hereby shut down pending investigation of environmental crimes and worker endangerment. Tyler stared at the official documents in disbelief. This can't be legal. I have rights as a business owner. You can't just padlock a legitimate manufacturing facility. Federal law supersedes business ownership when criminal activity endangers lives, Marshal Thompson explained. Your facility will remain closed until federal authorities complete their investigation and determine whether criminal charges are warranted. Additional enforcement officers began installing barriers around the main entrances, while workers inside were notified of the emergency evacuation. The afternoon shift streamed out of buildings, many expressing relief that someone had finally addressed the dangerous working conditions. Tyler pulled out his phone and dialed frantically. Dad, I need you to call Senator Morrison immediately. Federal marshals are shutting down the facility. They're saying we committed environmental crimes. The conversation with his hospitalized father was brief and explosive. Even from 10 feet away, we could hear Harold Blackwood's furious shouting through the phone speaker before Tyler's face went completely pale. No, Dad, I can explain everything. The safety officer was exaggerating the problems. These inspectors are overreacting to minor issues. Tyler's voice became increasingly desperate as his father's tirade continued. Martinez approached Tyler as he ended the call. Mr. Blackwood, I need to inform you that criminal referrals are being filed with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Environmental Crimes Unit of the Department of Justice. Criminal referrals. Tyler's voice cracked. What are you talking about? I'm a businessman, not a criminal. Dr. Chen stepped forward with her testing results. Mr. Blackwood, we've documented systematic illegal dumping of industrial chemicals into protected waterways. Combined with willful endangerment of workers, these activities constitute federal environmental crimes punishable by significant prison time. Rodriguez added his assessment. The OSHA violations alone demonstrate willful disregard for worker safety that could result in criminal charges. When combined with the environmental crimes, you're looking at potential federal prosecution under multiple statutes. Tyler's corporate lawyers arrived within an hour, 3 men in expensive suits who immediately demanded to speak with their client privately. Their confidence evaporated quickly as they reviewed the federal closure order and criminal referral documentation. Tyler, this is much worse than you described, lead counsel Robert Hayes said after reviewing the evidence. Federal environmental crimes carry sentences of 20 to 30 years. Combined with worker endangerment charges, you could spend the rest of your life in federal prison. The media arrived next. Local news crews, followed by regional reporters who had picked up scanner traffic about the federal facility closure. Tyler found himself surrounded by cameras as reporters asked about criminal charges and worker safety violations. Mr. Blackwood, can you comment on the hospitalization of Stephen Garcia due to chemical exposure at your facility? Asked Jennifer Walsh from Channel 7 News. Tyler's media training abandoned him completely. This is all a misunderstanding. We run a safe facility that provides jobs for hundreds of families. These federal inspectors are destroying a legitimate business over minor technical issues. His statement was recorded and would be played repeatedly over the following days, demonstrating his continued refusal to accept responsibility for endangering workers. Sarah Thompson approached me as federal officers secured the last of the facility entrances. Margot, I can't believe this is actually happening. For months, we've been scared to speak up, and now federal marshals are shutting down the whole facility. James Miller joined our conversation with several other workers from quality control. We heard about Stephen Garcia's hospitalization. Everyone knows this place has been dangerous since Tyler took over. Thank you for bringing in people who actually care about worker safety. The workers' gratitude was overwhelming, but also heartbreaking. They had been suffering in dangerous conditions for months, afraid to speak up because they needed their jobs to support their families. Tyler's intimidation tactics had silenced people whose only crime was trying to earn an honest living. Marshall Thompson approached Tyler with additional documentation. Mr. Blackwood, you're being advised of your rights regarding the ongoing federal investigation. Anything you say can and will be used against you in criminal proceedings. Tyler's lawyers immediately instructed him to remain silent, but the damage was already done. His earlier statements to reporters and his dismissive comments about worker safety had been recorded by multiple sources. By 6 o'clock, Blackwood Industrial Manufacturing was completely shut down, surrounded by federal barriers, and secured with government padlocks. The facility that had operated for 30 years was silenced by Tyler's arrogance and criminal negligence. Workers gathered in the parking lot processing the reality that their workplace had been closed by federal authorities. Many expressed relief that the dangerous conditions would finally be addressed, while others worried about their family's financial security during the closure. Tyler stood alone near his BMW watching federal officers secure the facility he had destroyed through his reckless decisions. His phone rang constantly with calls from reporters, business associates, and family members who had learned about the federal closure. Inspector Martinez approached me as the operation concluded. Miss Williams, your courage to come forward prevented what could have been multiple deaths or permanent disabilities. Stephen Garcia's collapse today was just the beginning of what would have happened if this facility continued operating. Dr. Chen added her perspective. The environmental damage from the illegal dumping will take years to remediate. Your documentation provided the evidence we needed to stop additional contamination of the watershed. Rodriguez shook my hand firmly. In 20 years of federal inspection work, I've never seen documentation as thorough and professional as yours. Your testimony will be crucial for the criminal prosecution of Mr. Blackwood. As we prepared to leave, Tyler made one final desperate attempt at damage control. Margot, you've destroyed 400 jobs and ruined a family business. I hope you can live with the consequence of your vindictive actions. I looked at him standing alone in the parking lot of the facility he had destroyed. Tyler, I can live with protecting 400 people from dangerous working conditions. Can you live with Stephen Garcia's hospitalization and every worker who suffered because of your greed? He had no answer, turning away to face the reality that his criminal decisions had triggered federal intervention that would change his life forever. The shutdown was complete, but Tyler's legal problems were just beginning. Within 72 hours of the federal facility closure, the investigation expanded dramatically. The FBI's Environmental Crimes Unit opened a criminal case targeting Tyler Blackwood personally, while the EPA began assessing environmental damage from months of illegal chemical dumping into Beaver Creek. I received a call Wednesday morning from Assistant United States Attorney Patricia Reynolds, who would be prosecuting the federal criminal case. Miss Williams, your documentation and testimony are crucial for securing convictions on multiple felony charges. We're looking at environmental crimes, willful endangerment of workers, and obstruction of federal safety regulations. The scope of Tyler's criminal liability was staggering. Federal prosecutors were pursuing charges under the Clean Water Act for illegal chemical dumping, OSHA violations for willful endangerment of workers, and additional charges related to his attempts to cover up the violations after my termination. Stephen Garcia's hospitalization had triggered a comprehensive medical examination of all Blackwood workers. Dr. Michael Harrison, the occupational health specialist conducting the examinations, discovered widespread evidence of chemical exposure symptoms among employees. We're seeing elevated toxin levels in 67% of workers tested, Dr. Harrison reported. Long-term exposure to these chemical concentrations could result in permanent respiratory damage, neurological problems, and increased cancer risk. The medical findings strengthened the federal case against Tyler by demonstrating systematic harm to workers over an extended period. Each affected worker became additional evidence of his willful disregard for human safety. Thursday afternoon brought the news I had been expecting but dreading. Harold Blackwood, despite his ongoing recovery from the stroke, had learned the full extent of his son's criminal actions and made a devastating decision. Patricia Reynolds called to inform me of the development. Miss Williams, Harold Blackwood contacted our office this morning. He's terminating Tyler's employment and removing him from all corporate leadership positions. Additionally, he's offering full cooperation with the federal investigation. The elder Blackwood's decision was both practical and moral. At 73 years old, recovering from a major stroke, he understood that his life's work was being destroyed by his son's criminal negligence. Cooperating with federal authorities was his only hope of salvaging the company and protecting the workers who had been loyal to the family for decades. Tyler's reaction to his father's decision was explosive and public. He held an impromptu press conference outside his luxury apartment building, blaming everyone except himself for the situation. "My father is making decisions under duress from federal prosecutors," Tyler claimed to the assembled reporters. "I'm being scapegoated for normal business practices that every manufacturing company follows. These workers are just trying to get rich through lawsuits and federal settlements." His statements were legally disastrous, providing prosecutors with additional evidence of his refusal to accept responsibility and his continued disregard for worker safety. Corporate legal experts watching the press conference described it as career suicide and prosecutorial gift wrapping. Friday morning brought Tyler's arrest at his apartment. Federal agents arrived with warrants charging him with multiple felonies, conspiracy to violate environmental protection laws, willful endangerment of workers, obstruction of federal safety regulations, and illegal disposal of hazardous materials. The arrest was captured by news cameras showing Tyler in handcuffs being led to a federal vehicle. His usual arrogance was replaced by shock and disbelief as he faced the reality of federal criminal prosecution. Stephen Garcia's recovery became a symbol of the case's human impact. His wife Maria called me personally to express gratitude for bringing federal authorities to investigate the dangerous working conditions. "Stephen is getting better, but doctors say he'll have respiratory problems for years because of the chemical exposure," Maria explained. "We're so grateful that you didn't give up on protecting the workers. If you hadn't come forward, Stephen might have died." The environmental assessment of Beaver Creek revealed extensive contamination requiring millions of dollars in cleanup costs. Dr. Chen's investigation documented illegal chemical dumping spanning 18 months, affecting water quality for 3 downstream counties. The environmental damage from Tyler Blackwood's actions will require federal Superfund intervention, Dr. Chen reported. Cleanup costs are estimated at $15 to $20 million, and full environmental restoration could take a decade. Tyler's former wealth and connections proved meaningless against federal prosecution. His expensive lawyers could only advise him to consider plea negotiations as evidence mounted, demonstrating his systematic criminal behavior. The media coverage expanded beyond local news as the case became a national symbol of corporate negligence and environmental crime. Business journals analyzed how a privileged heir had destroyed a successful family company through arrogance and greed. Sarah Thompson contacted me with updates about worker medical examinations. "Margot, 23 people from my department have tested positive for chemical exposure damage. We're all eligible for federal compensation, but more importantly, we're alive because you had the courage to call the inspectors." James Miller and the quality control team organized a letter-writing campaign thanking me for protecting their health and safety. Their gratitude was overwhelming, but also a reminder of how many people had been suffering in silence before the federal intervention. The economic impact on Tyler personally was severe and immediate. His assets were frozen, pending restitution calculations for environmental cleanup and worker medical costs. The luxury lifestyle funded by his trust fund disappeared as federal authorities assessed his criminal liability. Harold Blackwood's cooperation with prosecutors included turning over internal company documents that demonstrated Tyler's systematic dismantling of safety procedures. Email correspondence showed Tyler explicitly ordering the cancellation of safety maintenance to reduce costs. Cut all non-essential safety spending. Read one email Tyler sent to facility managers. Profit margins are more important than federal compliance theater. Such communications provided prosecutors with clear evidence of criminal intent and willful disregard for worker safety. Tyler's own words would be used against him in federal court to prove systematic endangerment of employees. The facility remained closed, pending complete environmental remediation and safety system overhaul. Federal authorities estimated that bringing the facility into compliance would require 12 to 18 months and approximately $8 million in improvements. Tyler's legal team attempted plea negotiations, but prosecutors were demanding significant prison time given the scope of environmental damage and worker endangerment. The case had become too high profile and too serious for lenient treatment. As the investigation concluded, I reflected on the journey from discovering safety violations to seeing federal justice applied to corporate crime. Tyler's arrogance and criminal decisions had destroyed his father's life work and endangered hundreds of innocent workers. The workers' gratitude and Stephen Garcia's recovery reminded me why I had chosen a career protecting workplace safety. Behind every regulation and safety protocol were real people whose lives mattered more than corporate profits. Tyler Blackwood learned that wealth and privilege couldn't protect him from the consequences of criminal negligence. Federal law applied equally to trust fund heirs and ordinary citizens when public safety was threatened. Justice was coming, and it would be comprehensive and severe. 6 months after that fateful day when Tyler shredded my safety report, I sat in the federal courthouse watching him receive his sentence. Judge Patricia Morrison's words carried the weight of justice for everyone who had suffered under his criminal negligence. Mr. Blackwood, you systematically endangered 400 workers and caused significant environmental damage through willful criminal conduct. Your actions demonstrate complete disregard for human life and environmental protection. Tyler received 15 years in federal prison for environmental crimes and worker endangerment, with additional requirements for $25 million in restitution for cleanup costs and worker medical expenses. His privileged lifestyle was replaced by federal prison uniform and the reality of serious consequences. The transformation at Blackwood Industries under new leadership was remarkable. Harold Blackwood, despite his age and health challenges, had brought in professional safety management and invested $12 million in comprehensive facility upgrades. I accepted the position of Chief Safety Officer, leading a team of 6 safety professionals dedicated to creating the most advanced workplace protection program in Ohio. The facility that had once endangered workers became a model for industrial safety compliance nationwide. Stephen Garcia made a full recovery and joined our safety team as a supervisor, his personal experience with chemical exposure making him an invaluable advocate for worker protection. His wife Maria often visited the facility to see the safety improvements that had saved her husband's life. Margot, when I see Stephen come home healthy every day, I remember that your courage to speak up saved our family. Maria told me during one visit, you gave us hope when we thought nobody cared about working people. The environmental cleanup of Beaver Creek became a federal success story with advanced remediation techniques, restoring water quality ahead of schedule. Dr. Chen's oversight ensured that the watershed would be protected for future generations. Sarah Thompson's chemical burns healed completely, and she became an active member of our worker safety committee. Her experience motivated her to pursue additional training in industrial safety, eventually becoming a certified safety inspector. I never thought I'd see the day when workers could report safety concerns without fear. Sarah reflected. You changed everything for us, Margot. This facility is proof that companies can be profitable while protecting their employees. James Miller's respiratory problems improved significantly in the clean air of our upgraded facility. He was promoted to quality control supervisor and worked closely with our safety team to ensure that production never compromised worker health. The federal investigation's impact extended beyond Blackwood Industries, leading to strengthened whistleblower protections and enhanced penalties for corporate safety violations. My testimony before congressional committees helped shape new legislation protecting workers from retaliation. Tyler's appeals failed consistently as federal courts upheld his conviction and sentence. His transformation from arrogant heir to federal prisoner became a cautionary tale taught in business schools nationwide. The 400 workers who had once feared for their safety now enjoyed the most comprehensive workplace protection program in American manufacturing. Our facility achieved zero lost time accidents for 18 consecutive months, proving that safety and profitability could coexist successfully. Harold Blackwood's gratitude was deeply personal. Despite his age and health challenges, he made regular visits to the facility to see the safety improvements and speak with workers whose lives had been protected. Miss Williams, you saved my company and my conscience, Harold told me during one of his visits. My son's actions nearly destroyed 30 years of work, but your courage gave us the chance to rebuild properly. The legal precedent established by Tyler's case strengthened federal enforcement of environmental and workplace safety laws. Corporate executives nationwide understood that with wealth and connections couldn't protect them from criminal prosecution for endangering workers. I received recognition from the National Safety Council, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Department of Labor for my role in protecting worker safety and environmental quality. More importantly, I received daily gratitude from workers whose lives had been protected by speaking truth to power. The facility's success attracted attention from manufacturing companies seeking to implement similar safety programs. We began consulting with other facilities, sharing our experience and helping create safer workplaces throughout American industry. Stephen Garcia's recovery inspired him to pursue formal education in occupational safety, completing his degree while working full-time. His personal experience with chemical exposure made him an exceptional advocate for worker protection. Margot taught me that one person's courage can change everything, Stephen said during his graduation ceremony. When she called those federal inspectors, she saved my life and protected hundreds of families. Tyler's federal prison sentence ensured that he would spend the most productive years of his adult life paying for his criminal decisions. The trust fund lifestyle that had enabled his arrogance was replaced by the harsh reality of federal incarceration. The environmental restoration of Beaver Creek exceeded all expectations, with wildlife returning to areas that had been contaminated by Tyler's illegal dumping. Dr. Chen's oversight created a model for environmental crime remediation. Looking back on that moment when Tyler shredded my safety report, I realized that his arrogance had actually accelerated the justice that protected hundreds of innocent workers. His attempt to silence me had instead given federal authorities the evidence they needed to stop his criminal enterprise. The workers' children could now grow up knowing that their parents worked in safe environments where their health and safety were valued above corporate profits. That knowledge made every challenge of the investigation worthwhile. As I walked through our facility each morning, seeing workers protected by comprehensive safety systems and advanced environmental controls, I was reminded that standing up for what's right always creates positive change even when the personal cost seems overwhelming. Tyler Blackwood learned that criminal negligence carries serious consequences regardless of wealth or family connections. The 400 workers learned that speaking up for safety creates positive change when brave individuals refuse to be silenced. The most important lesson was that protecting innocent lives from corporate greed requires courage. but the outcome justifies every risk taken in service of justice and human dignity. The facility that had once endangered workers became a symbol of what American manufacturing could achieve when safety and environmental protection guided corporate decisions. Our success proved that profitability and worker protection were not competing interests, but complementary goals. Stephen Garcia's healthy recovery, Sarah Thompson's healed chemical burns, and James Miller's clear breathing reminded me daily that the courage to challenge corporate power ultimately protects the most vulnerable members of our society. Tyler's federal prison sentence ensured that his criminal negligence would never again threaten worker safety or environmental protection. Justice had been served comprehensively and appropriately. Have you ever witnessed corporate negligence that endangered innocent people? How do you think workers can best protect themselves when management prioritizes profits over safety? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like this story if you believe in holding corporations accountable for protecting worker safety. Subscribe for more stories about standing up to injustice and fighting for what's right. Share this story with anyone who needs encouragement to speak up against dangerous working conditions. Thank you for listening to my story about how one phone call to federal authorities brought justice to corporate criminals and protection to hundreds of innocent workers. Remember that your voice matters when fighting for safety and justice.